May I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Neely?
Here.
Commissioner Nacita?
Here.
Commissioner Roth? Here. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Yates?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Mum?
Here.
Commissioner Edgar?
Here.
Chair Walters?
Here. Do we have any citizen comments this evening that are not related to any of the staff, any of the agenda items? Okay, so we don't have any citizen comments. We'll move on to adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt?
Second.
No need for a motion.
No need for...
All right. Unless we have any objections, we'll move to item 4, general business. Item A, Cove Development, Landscaping and Grading Plan, staff update from Tony Kunkel, Community Development Director.
Thank you. Evening. At our last meeting, we discussed the Cove land use application and the amendments that needed to occur. At that meeting, the decision was made to allow the application to be submitted, but there was a request to bring back the landscaping, tree removal, grading plans, the construction plans at that meeting. So in the packet that you received, we provided the landscaping plan, the grading and erosion control plan, and we also included the Heritage Waters Task Force documents that were submitted. We received them, so we just put them in the packet so that you would have them as well, since there was discussion of last time of the environmental groups coming to speak or providing information as well. So that's the information that we did receive. On your dais tonight, we've also included a tree removal plan that's in color that shows the trees that are to be removed. So we believe we've provided all the information that's been requested. We do apologize that it took us a little longer to get the actual crossed out tree removal plan to you. So we have Ed and Randy and their team here tonight to go through a quick presentation and address any concerns or questions that you may have tonight.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. I apologize for my voice. It's not doing too well. But we would like to provide you once again with some information that updated from a meeting that we had with you last 2 weeks ago. And the status, we want to just give you a brief status of certain elements. Do you
want me to take this over?
Yeah, go ahead.
Randall has been suffering from a bit of a sore throat and a cold the last few days. So, on the status of the DDA and the CRA, the conditional reinstatement agreement, we have gone through it in detail, submitted all of our recommended modifications, and then have given that to the city. And that only happened today. It was a pretty exhaustive workup. I'm sure that will be available to you. It'll go to Janik and the staff for review. So it's both of those. On the land use approvals, we have submitted a preliminary DDP for the condos. Within the next week, we will submit the DDP for the final DDP. We got recommendations back from staff relative to the preliminary. And then also we'll do a CDP and a DDP for Phase 1 and Phase 2, the infrastructure. And that's where we're modifying basically the grading for the condo area and the removal of the subterranean parking. We did some work on the dredging. We met with the county and talked about them about different resources. There isn't a concise answer of where we can bring funds in. One of our hopes is that we can, in fact, work with the infrastructure budget and get that down to a level where we potentially would have additional resources there. And then we've talked to the county about their backing us up here and having additional funds. Evidently, originally there was about $100,000 that was coming from the city, and then $100,000 from them, and the number was in the 160 or so for doing the work, or 120.
The number I saw was just over 2.
Okay. So we're still looking at sources for that.
And the other thing is there that we were delighted to find that the permits had not expired. or permit is good for 5 years. The DSL permit has to be renewed annually, and it was renewed in April. So as long as we keep current on those things, we'll be in good shape.
We are continuing to look at alternative users for the different sites within the project. The two office spots, we did talk to Concordia last week. Their statement was that they were looking for something in the around 100,000 square feet, which would be very easily accommodated within our project. I didn't feel like they had a real definition of what they wanted to do or exactly what their program is, and I said, well, we'd be more than happy to meet with you and talk about how we could work together to actually define one of those uses. The two primary areas would be the center area between the condos, where we have currently laid out about 60 to 80,000. That has the ability to go vertical higher, which would be able to get them up to that larger space. And then with the Tri-City parking area behind, which has 277 parking spaces, that would be able to accommodate that use. So that would be a really nice opportunity if it's a real deal. So we'll continue to look at that. We do have one potential user for Lot 1, which is the upper area as you first start into the project coming up Main Street. That's 4.45 acres. That would require a parking structure. That's something that we're working on. And then looking at the other potential office users. We've, in terms of working on the David Evans plan, the trailhead has been incorporated, as you know. The path along the north side of Main Street has been incorporated. And then the tree preservation, which is what we'll go through right now. We can look at those drawings, which we have expanded and blown up. This is what we showed you a couple of weeks ago. Then there was a question, well, what are you taking out and what's going back in? This is the older drawing. These drawings, we can certainly get you copies of these. The background area is all the new planning that's going in, and these have been kind of clipped and cut. When you take a look at the full drawing, all of those circles that are in the background that are lighter color are all the new trees, and they're well defined within the plan. So it's a very extensive plan, and it's actually it'll be a beautiful plan in terms of having completed work there. So this is showing the new trees and also the trees that are being saved. And if anybody in particular would like us to get copies, we can certainly get you these expanded copies.
I presume in terms of the light circles, the larger circles are trees, the smaller ones are shrubs and other vegetation. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And the difference between the red and the green is?
There is no difference. It was just to distinguish so you wouldn't see a blob of red and not know that it was 3 trees or 4 trees. This is showing as we go. And this is basically the same drawing, but it now has the background area with the new trees in it. And you really need to get copies of this individually so you can look at it, and then if you have somebody that really understands the different types of trees, those are all listed over to the right of the drawing. So each of these sheets that are kind of connected here are separate large C-size drawings, which are like 24 by 36.
It looks like those areas where you have trees, you're planning to actually plant some larger trees, creating a grove in most of those areas.
That's the intent, is to beef up the area where we're preserving trees, and those will be pulled back a bit from where we're doing the rockeries that are securing and protecting those other trees.
We're planting over 1,000 new trees and over 3,400 new shrubs. So it will be an extensive planting exercise.
Actually, the cost of the landscaping is one of the most expensive parts of the infrastructure. This hasn't been set aside and said, well, let's just do some, gloss over approach to the landscaping. This is a very extensive plan, and if anybody that is in that business, if they need to look at it or you want to bring them in to review it, they will agree that it is a very well laid out plan. This is going to the north end, showing the same layout. This is the grading plan, and the shaded areas are where we're saving the trees, and it's got the grading in there. And once again, you need to really get a blown-up copy of this. This is kind of a summary level, and anybody that would like copies of this will certainly see that you get it. It is the area that we're preserving, and it's the grading plan. Each of these areas, we had them go back and do a detailed blow-up so you can see exactly what's going on there, and that's in this presentation also.
Is the swale, I'll call it a swale area, is that shown in this contour map?
If you look at, let's see if I can get an arrow here. You look at this right here, this is the area that's actually being built up around the tree, and that will actually go up a little bit higher, and then it comes back down. So it's a very detailed plan. When you get to the detailed of each one of these areas, it'll show that a little bit better.
Okay.
That's the north end again. These are the details. There's 12 different details, and it goes from one end to the other. And it's showing the grading and how it's working. Having spent a lot of time in the business, I can get a feel for how this is working, but most people that aren't familiar with how those different lines are there, they're intervals. In this case, I think they're either 2 or 3 feet. That's going up the hill and creating a cup area around those trees that protects it, and it goes up and then it comes back down with rockery behind it. So each of those areas are blown up, and those of you that are really into reviewing this in detail, just let Tony know and we'll get you full-size drawings. This is showing where the trees are being removed. They're X'd out. The round circle with an X is a deciduous tree, and then the evergreens. Is it evergreens on the round and deciduous on the stars? Do you know?
I think so.
Yeah. So it's going through showing those areas where we're removing trees, and this is based on a 6-inch diameter tree and greater. So there are other trees there that are actually being removed, but they're much smaller. And when we come back into our planning plan, we'll be basically mitigating those by planting a lot more trees in the area.
What are those little dots in the center of the?
I don't know. These little guys right here.
The gray dots.
Yeah. These. I'm not sure what that is.
They piers?
Aren't those concrete things that are out there?
There's a lot of concrete out there. It might have been some of the little pilings that were part of one of the buildings.
They're not trees.
No. No, there's no
They're
trees in
drawn
this
there,
area.
too. It's not in the photograph. They're drawn in, so.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
This is going across the very center. As I said, once again, we can certainly get you larger drawn plans, and it'll show this very specifically.
Is there tagging out there right now?
Pardon me?
Tony? Tony, is there tagging out there right now as to what under this plan would be removed and what would stay?
Well, we tagged the ones to stay. Did they come back and pin them? Do you know?
You know that, Rendell?
I believe so.
These little lines that are coming off these trees, which looks like something up to the bottom, those are numbers. So those should, in fact, be the tree and its number. So they should be tagged. And then, Randall, you had something to say about the task force?
Well, the Habitat Task Force was originally, excuse me, the idea was initially brought before you guys, I think, about 2 years ago. And there were some issues about whether it was going to make sense from a budgeting standpoint. There were some other issues, and some citizens got together and said, well, let's see what we can do on a volunteer basis. And I've been meeting with that group and basically looking for ways in which we can improve the habitat that are cost-effective and would add to the quality of the habitat. So I think Jerry Herman is going to give a little talk about what that group has been up to.
So if there's any questions, that's our quick overview of our status at this point. So answer any questions if you have any, or if any of you want to, a request that we get you full-size plans, we'll do that.
What I'd like to propose as an idea, just from my own past practice, is it's really difficult to make decisions by looking at a piece of paper. And I think it'd be well advised with Randy and Ed and with Gary's group to actually take these and the large papers and do a walkthrough out in the Cove, maybe on a Saturday or on an afternoon sometime, and see at ground level what all this information means up close.
I would like that.
We'll certainly accommodate you. Just let us know what time works for you, and we'll bring a couple of people along that would have a little bit better background than us, also our arborist guys and John Van Staveren and people of that nature. So contact Randy if he's going to be able to talk in the next week or so here, and we'll set up a time for you.
Just for clarification, am I still moving forward with the land use application?
Yes.
Yeah.
I see 3.
No, I mean, that I wouldn't want to make a decision until we had done the site visit. That's why I'm raising it.
I don't need to go out and walk the property personally. I know what it looks like, and
That's an option for people. I would suggest
it's an option if you want to take it, but I don't need it to make a decision.
Well, to me, the most important thing is what gets entered into the DDA after the fact, and I would like to know. I would like to verify what's in the detail that's going to be part of the DDA if we're proceeding in that direction, and I think we are.
Yes.
So, I think that the timing to understand the detail of this is critically important for us if we're going to advance a DDA through this through the Urban Renewal Commission.
Madam Chair.
Well, I think Messi got to keep in mind is that there are 2 tracks going on right here, and I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong. The status of the trees is a detail in the DDA. The DDA just makes reference to a land use plan, and that the critical decisions on tree removal and tree retention are not part of the DDA. They are part of the land use plan.
I would agree with that. I mean, the land use application is what's being proposed.
Right.
In the DDA, you approve the application to be submitted.
Then we need to get this verified.
So then we need to, for the land use application, I think the site visit is crucial for verification.
The submission of the application is a process for the staff to go through. It does not lock you in to a decision until that formally comes to you. So what we're trying to accomplish is
The land
get
use
the homework
application
done.
doesn't come to us, though. It goes to the Planning Commission.
That's correct.
So once we surrender, once we vote, we basically say, off on your way, and then we're done.
But you want to slow the process down you had time to submit your questions and go take a walk around.
Not with this information. We just got these documents this evening.
We legitimately should make sure if this has to be part of the land use thing, we should make sure that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed in the best interest.
And I don't mind if it's sooner than rather than later. I don't want to slow things
Tomorrow
out.
You guys can go walk it.
Or the weekend.
Or Saturday.
Are there any other land use application related questions that we need to address before we can direct city staff?
I think this was the one. I think this was the one remaining question. This was the remaining question that we had last time. I'm not aware of any others unless there are new ones tonight.
On the area of the dredging, I still have concerns about that.
Okay, I guess I'm sorry to interrupt.
Before we
It's not
shift
a
gears,
land-
we need to
let's
answer this
go
question
through
that's
land
on the
use.
floor.
Yeah.
The question that's up on that we need answers to right now is, you don't really even have an action item here. This is an update tonight. What we want to know is whether we should pace our land use application processing in a way that you can have a chance to go look at this and verify it and so forth. And then we report back. Is that what you're thinking? We report back to them based on the verification, or you let us know? If anyone has an objection to that, we need to know that before it actually goes to the Planning Commission.
I'd suggest that this get resolved in the shortest order, and if people can do it this weekend who want to go out there, then it should be done this coming weekend.
I'm amenable.
And our staff is going to be reviewing it as well, because we just got it. So.
I mean, the fact that trees are going down doesn't concern me. The fact that they are actually putting in several trees in a grove aspect is, I think, what's crucial. And so I'm sure the trees that they're preserving are probably the ones that have the best quality in terms of visual appearance and least likely to fall over. They are cottonwoods, so one time they will go over, or at least most of them are cottonwoods. And that's why I brought up the question I did, because clearly they are creating groves in most of those areas where you've got some standing trees. And I'm not sure that me going out there and looking at which of these trees are X'd out, I don't want to be in a position of micromanaging that process. They're working with people that know a lot more about that than I do, including volunteers. So,
Maybe we could have Jerry Herman speak to it. Do you think that would help?
I have a question about it. I would like to look at these trees because if you're taking down a 3-foot in diameter tree and replacing it with a 6-inch sapling, I want to know that. So we don't have any information on what's being put in there.
okay. But yeah, I guess you can get that clarification at this point, unless you have to have it specifically locationally identified.
Or at least minimum.
Does staff have a concern if we take this matter up on the application at the next Urban Renewal Commission hearing?
It's our decision.
When is our next?
November 2nd.
The decision about directing staff to continue with the application process.
Would it be acceptable to have the site visit within the next week? Okay. If I don't hear from a commissioner with a concern, we will move forward with the land use application. If I hear a concern, we will schedule it for November 2nd. Is that acceptable?
So moved.
I think we have consensus on that.
Yes. Is that Ed? Is that good enough? Is that
time frame?
Commissioner Nacita? Is that is that okay?
Yeah.
Or?
That's fine.
Okay. I just want to make sure everyone's concerns are being met here.
So, concerns to Tony by,
Close of business next Wednesday.
okay,
5 p.m.
I think that's the 26th.
Yes.
Okay. So, we do have
So
a...
does that?
So when's the meeting? When's the site visit going to be, or how are we going to go?
That's what I'd like. I was just going to raise that. You gentlemen, I think, would be welcome to that. You gentlemen would be welcome to that. Is that something we could do, say, at 1 o'clock on Saturday?
We'll get a hold of our consultants and confirm that, but I'm sure that they'll be available, so we'll just plan on it.
Jerry, you're scratching your chin.
I have to speak at a memorial on Saturday at 1, but there's other of us. Brian Boyce can be there, Richard Prater.
Well, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Early in the morning, I could.
Okay.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock? 10 o'clock Saturday?
That's when the beavers are most active.
Okay.
10 o'clock
10
Saturday.
o'clock Saturday.
And if there's a quorum of you, you're not going to be talking about
Oregon State.
the topics. Just take
Oh, you guys should listen to David about quorum.
If there's a quorum of you on the tour, just remember you're inspecting, you're not making decisions. So, no deliberations.
Thank you all.
We do have a member of the community that wishes to speak, J. Kevin Hunt.
Excuse me, we're going to have Jerry.
Jerry's up next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I didn't realize we were still doing that. Thanks.
Madam Chair, While he's coming up, I'm going to pass around an email that came today for the commission.
I'm Jerry Herman. I'm the co-chair of the Heritage Waters Habitat Task Force with Brian Boyce. Richard Craven, one of our members, is here. You've seen some of us here in the past. We submitted a package of information to you that we worked on independently, but we also talked with the developers about what our interests were. And I'm going to come back to the bottom line. Come to the bottom line. We've seen the work they've done in 5 different locations, and their work speaks for itself in that they, for the most part, tried to steward the habitat that exists at Oswego Point, Mary's Woods, Tidewater Cove. They've created a number of valuable elements in Tidewater Cove that they're actually talking about kind of doing in this project, swales and things of that nature. So we trust their judgment, okay? We're not trying to micromanage anything. Our major concerns came into 4 areas. Retain as many mature trees as possible. We had a fish and wildlife biologist, which Randy Tyler invited to be there, and she kind of guided us in our thinking, and she felt that wherever possible, save the bigger trees, and retain down woody material. You're going to say junk? No, not junk. There's junk in the cove too, but natural materials, and let those materials stay along the banks to provide the denning opportunities for the otters and the muskrat and so forth that are in there, and the beavers. Create some habitat areas as they place boulders. Try to create snags and snag values. By the way, your staff's done a great job. I'm very, very pleased, myself and our group is, in seeing snags being created on the east side of the cove over there by Water Environmental Services at Clackett Park. The question is, are these snags going to fall down, hit somebody? You know, might want us to think about that. But the long and short of it is, everyone's beginning to see the value of dead standing material or even downwoody material, and I think our developers know that value too. We also feel that nest boxes and other artificial nest structures could be built simultaneously as trees are being removed. Boy Scouts and others, I'd be willing to help orchestrate that work and get a bunch of nest boxes for tree swallows, cliff swallows, ledge nest for certain raptors, red-tailed hawk as an example, into the site to make up for the loss of habitat as things are growing. There's a maturing time that needs to be there, that these would help solve that problem, and that the concern about the water quality, the flushing, everybody wants to see that cove stay healthy. You know what? The river's doing what it wants. And the dredging may or may not solve the problem because the river has a mind of its own. Your North Spit, I'm not talking about me saying bad things and spitting on you, I'm talking about the North Peninsula that separates the cove from the river is degrading. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a whole BMX bike group out there. They have changed the landscape. They have modified hills that were 10 feet tall to be 20 feet tall. They've created dips and all sorts of elements to do their activity, and that North Peninsula, which is so delicate, is already beginning to fall apart just from that, not to mention the river's action. So our recommendation was, and Fish and Wildlife tended to agree with us, keep that area as a natural buffer and spend some time restoring it. Don't put a whole bunch of trails out there unless you intend to properly monitor them, because that area can't take it. That was a strong feeling that we made in terms of recommendation. The North Spit we feel is a very important site area. We were hearing things from Randy and Ed about perhaps, I don't know what the building site is called on their plans, I'm sorry I don't know what it is, but the borrow pit next to the shopping center. If that site is not going to be built on immediately, it's the most problematic, we understand, to build it up to the level of Highway 99E, huge amount of filling. I can see a pyramid with a building on top, I'm exaggerating. But apparently that building would have to have underground garages and all the rest to handle parking because there's no room for parking. If that's not to be built on so quickly, there's 200 small trees out there. I'm not saying 6-inch plus, I'm saying 6-inch and below, 8-inch, 10-inch, 20-inch trees out there. It'd be nice to see the so-called mass grading limited in that area if there was a way to do that. And by the way, I personally have a terrible problem with the term mass grading. It's one step closer to a major transformation of a landscape. I really think we're talking about augmentation and adjustment of the site. That's just my bias. All right. The East Promenade and Esplanade, which is the area where most of your major development is going to occur. We like the plan, the landscape plan. We like the retention of trees that's being proposed. I'm not sure which is which trees are being designated for retention, which are not. There's some nice evergreens there that we'll see on Saturday next to the Marine Patrol docks. And along Main Street, I'll have to tell you, there's 2 beautiful maple trees there that were in the Tourism Development Council's story of the Cove 10 years ago. And they turned bright yellow, as they are right now. And I believe those trees, because of the need for a sidewalk there, are going to be removed. If there's some way to do some adjustments, there's not a lot of big trees there, 75, over about 800-foot length. If there's some way to reduce the number of trees being lost in that area, they're beautiful trees. They're not just cottonwoods. They're ash trees and maples and so forth. So we really appreciate the opportunity to share with you what our thinking was. We did make a statement, an umbrella statement, that we have some suggestions about possible partnerships. We are one group. The Oregon Concrete Aggregate Association is another group. I spoke with their president today. They're the ones that dug that hole under the leadership of Jack Parker Sr. and his son Scott. Clackamas Cove was created as a man-made feature. We thought perhaps they could come together with the city and these qualified, very capable developers and the community and develop an interpretive theme in there with signage and other things that might say something about their industry, because their industry generally is misunderstood. They're very open to that. We're very excited about that. They have a direct link to the Oregon Wildlife Heritage Trust Fund, which gave $1 million to improvements on the Clackamas of a former gravel pit operation called River Island Sand and Gravel to make it into a habitat area, which Metro also then partnered with. We think that that is another group that could participate in things that have not direct involvement with the Cove, but ancillary things within the Cove to make it a more of a community resource. Bernard Towing Company, I was told, talk to them about the dredging. They might have some ways in their mechanisms, because they have special permitting. We have the permit. They have special methods to reduce the cost. One of our members is a member of the Clackamas River Basin Council. PG must come up with 1 million cubic yards of gravel to put back in the river, the River Mill Dam and North Fork dams, because of their relicensing requirements. They must put gravel back in the river to keep the natural process of recruitment moving down the river. Guess what? Well, we don't have 1 million yards yet. We have 15,000 yards the permit allows. We think a partnership could be developed with PG to get this gravel, as was suggested by Commissioner Nocita and I think Commissioner Edgar, perhaps as a value to someone else that might help pay for its removal and or transport. And so we're willing to work on that with you. The last but not least thing was I was hoping to see tonight Mike Schnell, the president of the Oregon Bass and Panfish Clubs, plural, and Senator Alan Olson, who is the past president and founder of the Oregon Bass and Panfish Federation. And we talked this over with Fish and Wildlife. Is there a reason that bass and panfish can't be in there? And the biologist says they're in here. Would enhancing their habitat be detrimental to salmon and steelhead? Whatever you do for salmon and steelhead, for bass and crappie, bluegill, and so forth, would still also benefit, for the most part, anadromous salmon and steelhead. In other words, fish that are listed. And so Fish and Wildlife is very open to that. There's 2 clubs, 2 major clubs in this area. They redid Henry Haig Lake. If you don't know how big that is, it's 10 times bigger than Clackamas Cove. They redid that and made it into a wonderful destination fishing area. And those folks are local here that are willing to be a part of this community project. So, thank you.
Jerry, thank you. I have a concern. Jerry?
Yes.
You talked a lot about restoring habitat for the beavers and things like that. You didn't mention any ducks.
Ducks? Oh, ducks.
If Jerry is on board with this project, I mean, that's a big plus.
There are more ducks than beaver there, anyway.
So I'll pass to you a list of potential partners we're willing to help pursue with you and help this project move forward.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we do have 2 members from the public to come up and speak, Jake Kevin Hunt and Michael Berman. If you could come up together and state your name and city of residence.
My name is Kevin Hunt. I live in Oregon City. The last presentation answered many of the questions I have, but I still have a few concerns about this overall project, one of which is that it seems like the words that I'm hearing from, especially from the last Urban Commission meeting and this Urban Renewal Commission meeting and this one, I hear over and over, maybe, possibly, might, could, we don't know. I hear a lot of that. It concerns me that at the last convocation of this body, it seemed that there wasn't even a definite answer as to whether dredging was going to occur or could occur here. This is a big issue to me, and I keep hearing, there's certain voices that keep saying, well, it's imperative that we don't slow down. We can't slow down. We can't slow down. Your job is to, as you know, is not to rush things through with the rubber stamp, but to make sure these kinds of questions are answered. Whether or not that section can be dredged is critical as to the amount of community benefit is going to even be derived from this project. In addition now to not knowing whether that dredging is going to be feasible economically or otherwise, there's been a change in plans now so that the first phase will be condos rather than apartments. That may seem like nothing. I know it is, and obviously for good reason, important from the standpoint of the developers and having further financing down the road. My concern is this, though. Who are those condos for? Who's going to buy those condos and live in those condos? It's not going to be unemployed mill workers from a working class city called Oregon City. I can tell you that. This concerns me when we're talking about public financing of projects, private developments. Is who actually exactly is going to benefit. It's wonderful to have interest from places like Concordia. That's great. But again, I'm hearing things like might, we don't know, it's possible, we're willing to work with you, and so on and so forth. And the voice is saying, hurry, hurry, push it through, push it through. Oh, well, I think some of these questions need to be answered. The last presentation was wonderful. It was great to hear about 1,000 some trees or 3,000 shrubs or whatever being planted. And maybe it's just my own ignorance. If I'd come to more of these meetings earlier, I'd know the answer to this question. But I think it'd be nice to hear how many are being removed. And it's also be nice to know what the ones that are being removed are being replaced with as far as diameter and so forth. My bottom line is this. If we don't know even whether that stretch of river, primarily, this is my main concern, can be made navigable or not, if it's just going to be a place for people to spend $15,000 for slips to go around a pond and not have some community marina benefit because you can't make it navigable, this is a big concern to me as to whether it's worth the expenditure. In the words of Edward Abbey, some of you know who he is, before he died, one of the things he said was that growth solely for growth's own sake is the ideology of a cancer cell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Berman, Oregon City, class 83. The gentleman that spoke before, is it Jerry Herman?
Yes.
Much of my concerns were relieved. I shared some of the same concerns, I think, that the previous speaker had, as far as I was curious if the city had, as the city of Portland, Multnomah County, tree removal and mediation in place. Is there, in other words, if you take down a certain size of a cottonwood tree, you've got to replace it with 3 trees of another certain size. You can't take down a certain tree unless it's dead, dying, or diseased. There's a lot of those rules that are already in existence, and I'm wondering does the city have something like that in place? Is there I know that you can't plant a tree within 15 feet of a light post, but that's often the case in Oregon City, on Main Street particularly. Those are my main concerns. I think that Jerry Herman is asking the right questions and doing the right things, and I'm very happy to see that he's doing some things, and maybe that's probably a direction that I will take, is to watch and learn from what they are already doing. But that was some of the concerns I had as far as specific tree variety, species, that it's a sensitive area, it's a floodplain, it's interesting subsoils, and cottonwoods obviously thrive the best in there. They're also probably not the most desirable tree either. So those are some big concerns I had, and sounds like the city is and Jerry Herman you're all on the right track. So that was my main concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Neely.
No. I don't.
Okay.
I didn't hit the button.
Okay. So with that, I believe we can move on to the next agenda topic, 4B, and it's the establishment of an easement agreement across 1757 Washington Street. We have Nancy Crushauer, City Engineer and Public Works Director, for the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Walters. Good evening, Commissioners. Before you tonight is the request to authorize the city manager to execute the easement agreement between 1743 Washington Street, which is owned by the City of Oregon City, and it's currently, it's probably more commonly known as the GrowCo site, because it's been leased by GrowCo for a long time. And then 1757 Washington Street, which is the Amtrak site located adjacent to the GrowCo site. The GrowCo site is landlocked, and there had previously been an easement between the owner of GrowCo and Stimson Lumber. And since Urban Renewal bought the Stimson Lumber site, and while Mr. C is still a lessee on the Oregon City site, we do recommend that the easement be cleaned up. The old easement description needs to be changed because it used to be just a strip of land that he could access the site from, and now we have the driveway that's been constructed into the Amtrak site with the turnaround area. So we have rewritten the easement to reflect the current property owners and to update the easement description, the survey description. And the reason why it's coming before you at this time is because that it is involved with a pending agreement, which is not part of this report. It just happens to be the timing is why we're bringing this to you now. But, yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Edgar.
Is there a possibility that that this easement can be written with a where Historic Properties, who owns all of the property around it to the south and to the east of it, and then the west side is blocked off by the railroad, that at such time as they, where it's redeveloped, if it's ever redeveloped, that in as much as that he owns all of the property between facing up, in providing total access to it from Washington Street, why can't the easement be terminated at such time as there's any redevelopment of the rest of the property? So as against just having it a unlimited easement agreement.
Well, I think that's a little hypothetical, but the reason why I would recommend that you make it be a permanent easement is simply because that driveway, the Amtrak driveway, could serve as crossovers to other properties back there, and it could help us reduce future driveways along Washington Street. It could allow us to consolidate accesses at that one point. And Washington, this is just from a transportation design standpoint. The Washington Street is a minor arterial, and in our TSP it's a 3-lane minor arterial, which we would hope to keep that rather than having to turn it into a 5-lane arterial. And for those reasons, I think if you minimize the driveways and you maximize your access control, you also preserve the capacity of the arterial. So that would, from a transportation standpoint, that's what I would recommend.
But the number of lineal feet up and down, all the way down to where there really precludes that necessity, and with all of the other existing driveways that go into everything from the welding shop, each individual property down through there, I don't believe that any of those driveways are going to be given up anytime soon anyway. So all of those would then provide direct, straight through access to this property. So what it is really giving up public, taking public, private, in a sense. This driveway that goes in to the Amtrak station shouldn't really, it's not really a driveway, it's access to the Amtrak station. It shouldn't really be categorized like a street. And I think it's, if Historic Properties ever gets to a point where they redevelop any of the other properties, that I think it would be prudent that any easement that we would offer would cease at that time.
If I might, Nancy, couldn't the department handle most of those through your access permits process?
You mean in requiring a crossover easement or
Consolidation.
if they come in for redevelopment and if we have an adopted access control corridor plan? And the timing is often, we've been trying to do that on Beaver Creek Road, and it's slow.
May I ask, if we grant this easement, who's responsible for maintenance?
The Urban Renewal Commission is responsible for the driveway.
So if you're bringing heavy equipment in there by the easement, so any damage that's caused?
If it's specific to activities of whoever's using the city site, then they would have to pay for the repairs, but just normal, everyday maintenance, the owner of the Amtrak site would take care of maintenance. But if there's damage done, then it would be whoever's caused the damage.
And that's part of the easement agreement?
Mm-hmm.
To me, I'd still like to see it as a temporary agreement.
Well, I trust our Public Works Director on this one, because things will redevelop in that area, including those places that have current driveways and so forth, at one point or another. And I know the headaches we had on Malala in terms of working out new drives and new drive accesses. We were able to work out some, and it made it better for the traffic there. But if we can get control of it at an earlier stage, I think it's far better to have a permanent easement. Now, I wanted to be clear on this. We're talking about the sample parcel recorded as 99043178. Is that correct? That's you're calling it now the Amtrak site, but that's the Urban Renewal site.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to move to grant the easement to the property recorded as recorded as 99043178 between the former owner Simpson Lumber and a tenant of 1743 Washington Street.
Second.
Discussion?
I need some clarification on what this motion is.
It's for that site. It's for that easement portion that's owned by the Urban Renewal Agency.
I would like to see it as a 10-year, personally.
If somebody wants to amend it and vote on the amendment, that's okay. I'm not going to change my motion, and it's been seconded.
I have a question about the maintenance issue. I've always dealt with these easements and been concerned about shared maintenance agreements. And I don't know how you distinguish between damage that occurs over time with heavy trucks and damage that occurs over time with small cars. It might happen a little faster with heavy trucks, but it'd be very difficult to prove it. Is there any reason why there's not some sort of joint maintenance issue involved here? I mean,
No, this is just the way we wrote it.
I mean, it seems to me that is, if I was a private if I owned it privately and somebody asked me for an easement, and I'd say, well, sure, no problem. I mean, it's there, but
let's see, there is a small fee on the easement, and maybe perhaps that would be considered for some of the maintenance.
I mean, I really don't have a problem with the easement. I have a problem with the maintenance issues.
Yeah, so there's a $600 a year fee, and I guess that could, like I said, that could be considered for part of, that's a decision for the Urban Renewal Commission to make, right?
I'd like to move to amend this motion that the easement agreement is considered temporary to the time when any redevelopment occurs on all of the contiguous property owned by the same person, Historic Properties. At that time, this easement agreement is no longer in effect. Is in effect.
I have not really had experience writing easements like that, so I'd really want to defer to the city attorney for that, because we don't usually write that much detail, and it's usually a public easement, it's a sewer easement,
Well, it's my opinion that if we're going to make substantive changes to the wording of the document, we need to probably not act on it tonight and have our city attorney look at it again. That's what I think is.
There's a motion on the floor, and I'll have to have a greater, before I would draw it, I have to have a greater argument than that. I mean, we've got these issues being brought up before us, and the attorney wishes to address it. I'd like to hear from him.
The question is whether Joe West, the question is whether the easement could be amended to provide for provision that, if I understand Commissioner Egner, that the easement would terminate upon other access being available to the parcel in question. That provision, it could be proposed in the agreement that way. There's no prohibition of that.
And maintenance
issue?
In the maintenance provision, it was proposed to us in drafting the easement that the Commission would retain maintenance responsibility other than damage caused by the owner of the other site. Joint maintenance is a possibility. However, as Nancy pointed out, there was a compensation provision put in the agreement. So these are terms that can be negotiated between the two property owners and could be included in the easement.
Between the city and the Urban Renewal Commission, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we really are talking about the existing property owners.
Right.
I think it's really speculative.
We're granting an access to the city.
Right,
That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
The city owns the property, so that's.
So I want clarification from the mayor on your motion being
Was
just to adopt this easement as proposed?
That was it. But I'm going to withdraw the, I think you put forward an amendment, but I don't know if we got a second or not. I'm willing to entertain suggestions for the change.
If your motion is to adopt the easement as proposed, and it's been second, I'd like to call the question.
Yep.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates?
Abstain.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
No.
And Chair Walters?
No. So we have
7 to 1.
Seven.
Motion passes 7, 2 no, 1 abstain.
Okay, and now we have no city manager's report and any future agenda items on item 6.
We called, this is a clarification of the city manager, we called for a study session, I think, dealing with the letter from the development that was proposing for different things. You've indicated, I think, in a memo that Cordy would not be in a position to talk.
They just weren't ready yet.
They just weren't ready yet.
They said a month or so, and we're going to check back with
Okay,
them.
so we're not going
Also-
to schedule that study session until
we hear from
yeah.
them.
Okay.
But we do have the growth design scheduled.
Yeah. We have Growth Design, which is one of the partners, I think.
For November 8th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also, I did think of one thing to report. We're really getting close to the interviews for the economic development manager position. I know that's not an urban renewal position, but many of you work closely with that person. So we're having a reception, I believe it's next Tuesday or Wednesday night. One of those
Monday
two
night.
nights.
It's Monday night.
Is it Monday night? So we'll get an invitation out to them so that any of you who want to meet the individual candidates, we're going to have a handful of them there for you to mingle with, and please let us know your feedback. If you
How
have
many candidates have been narrowed down?
I haven't talked to Jim Leffler today about it, but I think it's 5 or 6. So, thanks.
Thank you.
And with that, I guess we...
Wait! Future agenda item.
Oh,
I wanted to schedule for the next Urban Renewal Commission a full discussion, a fair hearing on Commissioner Yates's listserv idea.
Well, it's my idea, and I think that's good, but I thought we had agreed to put it at a work session.
That's right.
Yes.
And I think it's more suitable for a work session because it is pretty complicated, I think, for a lot of people. I think it's pretty simple, but I think it's complicated for a lot of other people. And
Would you like a date certain?
I would like a work session date, yes, that would
Okay.
be nice.
Could we get a date certain for a work session discussion on all this?
Is there consensus among the commission?
Yeah.
I think we already.
Yes.
And just
anyone who doesn't agree, say no.
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 Well, does that mean
So
we
that's-
have to move?
Well, I mean, a work session or study session is not a decision-making session. If you don't want to take the time with it, that's one thing. But if it's a case of an opinion that at this point you're not in favor of it, I just don't think that should. Generally, when anybody on the city commission wants to talk about a subject at in a work session, we generally approve it. Whether there's a consensus at that particular point, whether the thing should go forward or not. But we could, I don't know how we could take a vote on whether we put it on, if you want to do it that way.
Madam Chair, if I might, there is a little unique situation here because and I don't want to be too penny pinching here because I did mention what we had spent before, but depending on if we're going to have a work session and we're going to have debates among the lawyers, 3 of which are sitting up here that don't represent the agency and 1 of which does sometimes, we will want to have those attorneys present because there are a lot of legal issues involved in this. And so if you're not...
But if those issues may, or one way or another, may be the guide to whether
May or
we
not-
want to go
may or
that
may not
direction.
But let me just point this out too. Commissioner Yates just gave us this document today, and I plan to send that out to you if we haven't already. We're going to be sending that out, and he addresses every single point in there that was in the city attorney's memo, and I think a few more. I haven't read it yet either, but you may want to take a chance to look at that before you actually decide whether you want to have a consensus to continue. We can certainly continue, but you'll want to look at that either way, I think, before you make your mind up.
I'd like to get Commissioner Yates' opinion. Would you prefer that your memo be background reading for a certain date, certain work session, or would you prefer that we review it and then decide whether to have a work session?
Well, I thought we agreed by consensus a month or so ago to have this work session.
Yes, we did.
So,
Yes, we did.
and so I would like to have the work session. It seems the memo that I wrote was just background, as you might suggest, for the work session. I don't want to make it contentious. I would like to see consensus on this, but I would like to have an opportunity to discuss it because David and I just had an interesting discussion about it this afternoon. He has some valid points, sort of operational points. I think the legal points, to me, aren't significant. I don't think we need lawyers there personally. But
We got 3 lawyers right here.
I understand, but I personally believe that the law is flexible enough to do what we want to do on a policy level. And I think the policy issues are really what I'd like to talk about at the work session. And then if we as a group, and it may be that we don't, want to move forward on a policy level and on a staffing level, based on the legal memo that's already been presented, I'm very reticent to incur additional costs for something that's never going to go anywhere. So I don't have any problem with having lawyers there, but they're quite expensive. And I'd like to talk about it on a policy level first. And I firmly believe that if we choose to do it, there's legal ways to do it.
I mean, I think we've already had the consensus on the work session. I think we've got to realize as a body, the Urban Renewal Commission does 2 things. It aggravates property and it does projects. That's what it does.
It aggravates properties. I'd agree with that.
What did I want to say? Anyway, brings property together, consolidates. I think that's the word I want to do. Consolidates property and does projects. And I think anything that we look at in terms of policy have to be directed to those 2 aspects, and those 2 alone. But we've agreed to the work session.
Let's have it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Excuse me, may I suggest a date of November 8th, which would be, it's a Tuesday evening. That way, why is that in red? No, it is a city commission work session, but if we could hold it after the city commission work session.
I have to work late that night.
Okay. It's just difficult to work in
Yes.
like you saw tonight, but we'll work on a date and get back to you.
Sometime next month would be soon enough for you, won't it?
Yes.
Or December. Christmas present. We'll put a bow on it.
November would be good. For Thanksgiving.
Maya.
Thank you. And we have, let's see, I'm a little confused because we've got Paul Edgar grayed out and James Aceta in green.
No, that was my point.
Okay.
There's no one listed.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to put onto a future agenda the transferring of property, of the Stimson property that is now going to be going into wetlands use as part of the jug handle to the city. We had talked about that previously, and it had been part of understandings that we had voted on within the Urban Renewal Commission to do something like this. We now have an opportunity where we could, where we should look at this and have it in front of us at the earliest possible time. Would be, we shouldn't be maintaining a land that's being used as a wetlands within the Urban Renewal District. It's just inconsistent. It should be in the public works domain, not in the Urban Renewal. So I think it's right now, it's timely for us to facilitate that and make that happen and come up with a fair and equitable transfer to the city where it doesn't cost either party any money. We're transferring some land to the Urban Renewal Commission. We give them that land in straight up trade.
So what's the future agenda item?
I'd like to make that a future agenda item, that we get a plan coming from the city as to what land they would like to transfer to us, that and where we move this Stimson, previously known as the Stimson Lumberland properties that are now going into wetland utilization in the jug handle, so it's no longer part of the Urban Renewal lands. And then one other issue I would like to see happen in the near future, very near future, is that I think maybe a part of a work session. In the goal setting, I brought up the opportunity for us to looking at breaking apart the downtown urban renewal district into smaller urban renewal plan areas. Recently in the Oregonian, the mayor of Portland talked about this same idea of breaking urban renewal districts up within PDC into smaller, more manageable cost centers, profit centers, and logical business plans. I think we need to start looking at doing that so that we don't encumber a urban renewal district established in 1977 to a point where it never has a payday to the school district, to the community college, or anyone by just keeping it going as like it's a permanent slush fund. We need to have a beginning and end to it. We need to start projects, not preclude any projects from being considered, and by enacting, breaking it apart into individual urban renewal areas, such as like I outlined as a suggestion within the goal-setting document that was presented. This could be a framework to look at how we might be able to be more business-minded in what we're doing and not preclude any project from coming before us, but not have a ongoing, never-ending urban renewal district that never has a payday.
So you want like a close date discussion, is that kind of?
I'm going to propose it as a work session.
It's a work session.
In a work session, it just needs to be, we need to come up with an idea. Can we break our urban renewal plan area apart into separate urban renewal districts?
Okay, so maybe can staff kind of give me the cue on what the work session's?
I need to ask a clarifying question or two.
Yeah.
Because you said three different things there.
Yep.
The last one you said was separate districts. So, yes, you can do that. You probably can do that. We'll have to get our attorneys to work on whether or not, how that would work. I'm not sure. But then you also mentioned special planning areas downtown within the district that exist now, which you can also do.
It's trying to create small enough areas where they have uniqueness to them,
Right.
and there can be business plans associated with them.
Right.
That doesn't overlap into every other place, so it has, we can say,
I understand.
here's the business plan, this is what it is, it's going to start here, we put so much money in, and it ends here.
We typically call those special planning areas. So if you want to identify special planning areas within the current district, that's a different question.
Well, but I would like to see us we need to have a termination plan that allows us to bring some termination to what we're doing, and right now we don't.
That's a third question. No, I'm not trying to be difficult. I only need to know that because when we come as staff, I want to be prepared for us to be useful.
But I want to make sure that we talk about it before we get the attorneys writing things.
This is where we go into a work session, we do it.
My suggestion is that we take this work session, put it onto the January work session, because we may have new Urban Renewal Commission members at that particular point. And so that we don't have a break in the discussion. So if that's okay, I would suggest it for a work session in January.
It's just, the Cove, if the Cove could be put into its own...
That's fine. We're probably not going to take action on it this year anyway. I doubt it very much. And I would prefer to have it in a contiguous discussion with the members that will be on next year on the Urban Renewal Commission.
And Mayor, there is one more outlet for this same sort of thing to occur, Commissioner Edgar, and that is you can also review and or amend your current urban renewal plan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another way, because right now you do have projects in there and they're targeted, and that thing ends when those projects are done. So if you change the projects, you change the end date of your...
Those were all part of that, in that goal-setting document that I presented as a suggestion of things which we could be talking about. And I just don't think we ever got around to getting it going, and I think we should. It should be part of the agenda somewhere down the line in a work session.
Well, we're into right now 40 minutes into the City Commission's meeting period, and we have these long dialogues that are better handled in the work session process. I move to adjourn.
I have a question clarifying this discussion.
Okay.
There was multiple work session issues there.
Yeah.
The first one, which was dealing with the transfer of properties, I think that that can wait for a while too. I don't. So was all those topics lumped into that January work session?
Yes.
Is that what we?
Or work sessions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to see the transfer discussion take place, if we have time, after we discuss the listserv. In that work session. I think it could happen
So
sooner.
January?
I don't see that one as being a controversial, I mean, it shouldn't require a lot of, hopefully, preparation or time.
If it could happen earlier, it would be nice.
Does anyone have an objection to that discussion, which is the transfer, looking at transferring the wetland mitigation property to the city in exchange for some other consideration?
I do, because I think it's going to take a while to figure out what piece of property we want to transfer.
That's right. I think again, it's something that you're going to have two commissions that are going to have to agree to it.
Right.
And I think it's going to take more than before the end of the year.
Right.
Okay, so we're just looking at the listserv topic for the next work session. Okay? And with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.